Chapter 3 of The Adventures of Mabel by Harry Peck. This Librivox Recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3 The Frogs at the Bridge. Mabel was very happy with Rex, and every day she took more and more pleasure in him. Each morning she would run out to see him before breakfast, and when he saw her coming he would neigh and stamp. Then, after she had had her own breakfast, she would go again to the barn to feed him. She always piled his manger full of sweet-smelling hay, and mixed his oats and his meal with her own little hands, and she fed him bundles of rich clover, and pieces of apple, and bits of fresh green cornstalks. Mabel and Rex were the best of friends. Mabel loved to perch upon the manger and rub his nose and talk to him by the hour, smoothing out his long mane and combing his forelock, and he in turn would put his great head against her face, and neigh softly as she petted him. After Rex had eaten his hay and his oats, John from Uncle Robert's would come down and curry him with a currycomb and put Mabel's new saddle on him, and then she would climb up on his back and start out for her morning ride. She almost always rode in the same direction, down the lane past a house where a cross dog lived, then over the bridge that crossed a pretty little brook, then up a hill past a field where there was a mooly cow, and another house where Mabel often saw a kitty cat sitting in the front yard, and finally down a long lane that went through the woods till she came out into the open country where a little pig lived, in a small red house. There were other roads that went to the right and to the left of this road, but Mabel did not try any of them, because she did not yet know the way very well, and she was afraid of getting lost. She loved to ride down the lane that went through the woods, for it was so shady when the sun was hot, and all the birds and squirrels and tree toads that lived there knew her. Sometimes, when she looked down through the long green thickets, she could see the good wolf lying among the tangled leaves, and she always called out to him, and he spoke back to her in a very gruff but good-natured voice. When Rex first saw the big black wolf head sticking out of the bushes and heard the growl, he used to feel frightened, and would snort and stamp. But after he found out that Mabel knew the wolf, and that the wolf was very friendly with Mabel, he left off being afraid, and would whinny to the great black creature whenever he saw him. In Mabel's morning rides she often stopped Rex in the woods, and climbed down from his back to pick berries or lie on the moss under the trees. Rex would always wait for her, so that she did not have to tie him. While she was playing about under the trees, he would nibble the sweet grasses that grew by the roadside, and now and then would put his head over the fence and neigh in a friendly manner to his little mistress, who always answered him in her cheery little way. Since she had learned to know animal talk, she had come to take a great interest in all kinds of animals, for they no longer seemed strange to her, just like little brothers. And when she talked with them they could now understand her, so that even the wildest of the squirrels and the shyest of the rabbits in the bushes would come out to meet her, and eat out of her hands the nuts and acorns and tender green leaves that she picked for them. When she lay on the moss they played with her without the slightest fear, running and jumping over her head, or nestling down by her face, and taking a long nap beside her. In the brook where the bridge was, there lived a family of frogs. There was the big green papa frog, and a mamma frog, and 5 little baby frogs. They often sat upon stones in the middle of the brook, and croaked to Mabel in their funny little voices as she went by, and she got to know them all very well. One day, all 7 of the frogs were out in the middle of the bridge, fast asleep in the sun, when Mabel came riding along. They were right in the way, and Mabel was afraid that if she tried to cross the bridge, Rex might step on some of them and crush them. So she stopped him and cried out to them. "Wake up, frogs," she said. "Come, wake up. I want to go by." But the frogs didn't hear her and slept straight on. Mabel called and called again, but still they didn't hear. At last she rode Rex up to the stone fence near by and slipped down from his back. Then she walked up to the big green frog and took him by his forefoot. "Come, frog," she said. "Wake up. You'll get stepped on." The big frog woke up all of a sudden with a start. At the same time all the other frogs woke up. They saw someone bending over them, and at first thought it was a bad boy who was going to catch them and put them in a bag and sell them to some cook who would cut off their hind legs and fry them. So without waiting to see anything more, they all gave a big jump and went splash, plunk, plunge down into the brook as hard as they could go. Pretty soon, however, they popped their heads out, and there they saw Mabel climbing up on her horse again. Then they knew how good she had been, and how she had taken all that trouble to get down and wake them up for fear they should be hurt. The big frog swam up to a large flat stone that stood out of the water, and as Mabel rode by on the bridge, he puffed up his cheeks and said in a frog talk and in his croakiest voice, "Thank you, thank you." "All right, Mr. Frog," said Mabel, "only don't go to sleep on the bridge again, or next time someone may come along and walk on you, and smash you all into little pieces." Then she spoke to Rex and went galloping away home. The next morning it began to rain, so that Mabel could not take her ride. It rained all day, harder and harder, and when night came it just poured great sheets of water. The next day it was just the same. Rain, rain, rain. Mabel stayed in the house and played with her dolls, and wished the rain would stop. Early on the third day she got out of bed and went to the window. The rain was over and the sun was shining, and everything glittered in the bright light. "Oh, goody!" cried Mabel. "Now I can go out on Rex again." So she went down to the barn the first thing after breakfast, and as soon as Rex was fed and curried and saddled, up she got on his back and cantered out of the yard for a good long ride. Down the road she went past the cross dog's house, down the long hill, till at last she came to the bridge over the brook. Then she saw that the rain had filled the brook full, and had swollen it out and made it almost as big as a river. The water was high up, almost touching the bridge, and it rushed along, all foamy and swift, roaring as it went. "Dear me!" said Mabel. "Why, I never saw so much water before in my life." Just then she noticed that the 7 frogs were all out of the water and were squatting across the road in a line just in front of the bridge. They reached all the way over to the road so that Mabel could not get to the bridge without riding over them. "Good morning, frogs," said Mabel. "How big your brook is this morning! Come now, please get out of the road so that I can ride over the bridge." But the 7 frogs never budged, but just hitched up their shoulders and blinked. "Come, frogs," said Mabel again, very much surprised. "Don't sit there in the way. Can't you see that Rex will step on you if I try to get past?" But the frogs never stirred, and only hitched up their shoulders and blinked again very hard. Mabel began to be angry with them. "You stupid frogs!" cried she. "Come, hop away, quick! I want to go over the bridge." Then the frogs all puffed out their cheeks and croaked in frog talk. "Nope, no." "Why, frogs? What do you mean? Do you want to spoil my ride? Aren't you going to let me cross the bridge?" And the 7 frogs all said in frog talk, "No, no." Mabel was astonished. "Dear me," she said, "I don't know what you want. Is anything the matter with you?" They acted so strangely that Mabel rode up to the fence and got down off Rex and walked up to the frogs. When she came near the bridge, all the frogs hopped in front of her and held up their forefeet and croaked as hard as they could. "What? Don't you want me to go over the bridge?" she asked. "Is anything the matter with it? Tell me about it, frogs." The frogs all hitched up their shoulders and blinked very hard indeed, but they did not say anything, for frogs cannot talk very much, only a few short words. Mabel went to the side of the road and picked up a big stone, as heavy as she could lift. She carried it up to the bridge and threw it down on the planks. Bang! No sooner had the stone touched it than crack! The whole bridge fell to pieces and went down with a splash into the brook. The water swept over it in a minute and carried it away, hissing and foaming. Then Mabel saw that the brook had been so swollen by the rain that it had washed away all the posts that held the bridge up, and that if she had ridden on it she would have broken through and fallen down into the deep water and been drowned. The frogs all croaked very loud. "Oh, you good little frogs!" cried Mabel. "You knew that the posts were gone, didn't you, and wanted to keep me out of danger? Why, you have saved my life!" The frogs hitched up their shoulders, and as they blinked they all laughed together. "Dear, dear little frogs!" cried Mabel. "Thank you ever so much for being so good." And she stooped down and patted all their 7 green heads, one after another. They all croaked in a satisfied way, and then gave a big hop and went splash, plunk, plunge, down into the brook again, as hard as ever they could. Mabel climbed up on Rex once more and rode back home. On the way she met a man and told him that the bridge had broken down. So before long a party of men came and built a new bridge, with stone pillars underneath it, so strong that the brook could never wash away again. End of chapter 3.